because they have the same mentality as you.
Okay. So you're acknowledging that women have the freedom to.
Candace Owens, who I despise, used media tricks, but they didn't work. Buckle up, students. Professor Barger is in. If you're new here, I'm a behavioral communications consultant, professor, author, and your fearlessly authentic bestie. The terms bridging, flagging, and hooking come specifically from communications and media training, not formal debate. These techniques are used to manage interviews, stay on message, and shape narratives in high-stakes conversations. They're about controlling perception and message delivery, not necessarily about structured arguments or logic. And I can tell that Candace has been media trained, and well. Her problem is she doesn't also have the depth or mastery of any subject to use those tools well. So let's start with something foundational that Princella mentioned. There is a difference between denotation and connotation. Denotation, the dictionary definition of something like home, a place where someone lives. Connotation, the emotion, story, or vibe a word carries. For example, for home, that's comfort, safety, love, belonging. So when we communicate, we're not just saying words. We are shaping what those words mean to people. That's where something in comms called framing comes in. Framing is just how we talk about an idea. What are you going to focus on? How are you going to explain it? And what values are you going to activate in people? It influences how people think, feel, do, and say, right? And what beliefs they believe need to change or not. The person who controls the frame controls the conversation. Hint, it wasn't Candace. Okay, now let's unpack the terms bridging, flagging, and hooking. So bridging, classic media move where you pivot from a tough question to a point that you want to make or that you can actually master. A sentence that signals bridging is something like, I'd like to highlight that, or what we should be asking is. What Candace did when Princella brought up the lack of women in government, Candace swerved to talk about the fashion industry. That's classic bridging, but without purpose or connection. That's why it failed. She didn't link it back to the topic, so it felt like deflection, which it was, not direction. Now, I don't agree with anything Candace Owens says, but what she could have said to properly bridge is, I'd like to highlight that while representation in government is critical, we also need to examine how women are portrayed in influential industries like media and fashion. These spaces shape public perception in powerful ways. Their influence may differ from political power, but it's far from insignificant. See what I did there? So, behavioral tip. If you're going to pivot, bring the audience with you. Don't just escape tough questions or conversations. Build a bridge that actually makes sense. All right, 2, on to flagging. It's a way to signal this next thing is super important. Think of it like a verbal highlighter. A classic flagging phrase or two would be, what's important to understand is, or what people usually miss. What Candace did, she uses phrases in her rhetoric a lot of, let's be honest, or here's what no one wants to say. She says those things often to try to make her points sound like truth bombs, but the content that often follows her statements is shallow or disconnected. So that's why it fails. Flagging only works if what you're saying is actually insightful or grounded in something real. So what she could have said, what's important to understand is that conversations about feminism are often shaped by who has the microphone, and many working class women don't see their values reflected in elite feminist narratives. See what I did there? So behavioral tip, don't overpromise. If you flag something, make it worth the spotlight that you are shining on it. All right, and finally, hooking. This is the third one. This is a tactic to grab attention or provoke curiosity. Done well, it draws people in. Poorly, it baits a reaction. A sentence that signals a hook is something like, what may be surprising to you is, or you're not supposed to say this, but. What Candace did, she tossed out hot button hooks, or tried to. Kamala Harris, victimhood, elite feminists, trying to get Princella off her game. And it failed because hooks only work when the other person follows them. Princella didn't, thank God. She stayed grounded and on topic. Keep the main thing the main thing. What Candace could have said, What may be surprising to you is that some of the loudest voices in modern feminism are unintentionally leaving out the very women they claim to fight for, like stay-at-home moms, traditional wives, or women in conservative communities who also want dignity and choice. And to be clear, I do not agree with anything Candace Owens says or believes, but that's what she could have said based on her trash worldview. Behavioral tip: not every hook deserves your energy. Ask yourself, will biting onto this hook take me closer to my point or just off course? And sometimes strategic silence is the power move. Okay, bonus insight. Fourth one. Princella didn't just throw out stats to sound smart. She used them to make a point. And that is what we call in communications avoiding naked numbers. Naked numbers are data with no meaning. They grab your attention, but they don't change minds or teach. An example that you've likely heard: Black people are 13% of the US population, but over 30% of the prison population. That's a powerful stat, but alone, it's a naked number. Framed properly, it would be followed up by or retorted with: that stat isn't random. It reflects decades of biased policing, sentencing, disparities, and unequal treatment, starting with who gets stopped, who gets charged, and who gets a second chance. See what I did there? Now it has context. Now it teaches. That's what Princella did. She gave numbers meaning, and that's why they stuck. Candace used media tricks. Princella used message clarity and subject matter mastery. And that's the difference. Tricks will get you attention, but they don't build understanding or trust. If you want to influence, not just perform, you need more than technique. You need purpose, structure, and the nerve to hold the frame. Follow me for more, and maybe just go buy my book, The Price of Nice. Link is in the caption of this video.